In the 1950s, a line of Plymouth Fury cars is being assembled at an automotive factory, including a very rare bright red model. Unfortunately, the hood of this car falls on a worker, severely injuring his hand. Another worker, who decides to smoke inside the car, is found dead inside the vehicle hours later. Years pass. In 1978, high school senior Dennis drives to his friend Arnie's house in his car. Arnie, a clumsy nerd, joins him, and they head to school, where they both notice the beautiful Lee. Later, Dennis waits for Arnie at lunch, unaware that his friend is being harassed by a bully named Buddy. Dennis rushes to the school workshop, where Buddy is bullying Arnie, stealing his lunch and threatening him with a knife. Arnie tries to get his lunch back but loses his glasses, which Buddy deliberately crushes under his foot. The bully laughs but is immediately punched by Dennis. Other bullies attempt to attack Dennis, but a teacher arrives just in time. A knife is found in Buddy's pocket, leading to his expulsion, while his friends are punished. On the way home, Arnie spots an old, broken-down red Plymouth Fury. He convinces Dennis to stop because he likes the car and wants to take a closer look. Soon, George LeBay, the car's owner, appears. He tells them that the car is named Christine and used to belong to his brother, who passed away a few weeks earlier. The old man is willing to sell it for $250. Despite Dennis's surprise, Arnie agrees immediately. That evening, Arnie tells his mother about the purchase, but she is furious, even though he used his own savings. This forces Arnie and Dennis to take the car to a garage near an auto repair shop, where they meet the grumpy old Will. Though reluctant, Will agrees to let them leave the car there. On the way home, Arnie admits that he bought Christine because she's as ugly as he is, but can become much better if restored. Weeks pass. Arnie helps Will at the garage, and in return, Will lets him take spare parts to repair Christine. Meanwhile, Arnie becomes increasingly attached to the car. At the same time, Dennis bets his friends that he can ask Lee out on a date. During lunch, he sits at her table, but she says she already has plans with someone else. Disappointed, Dennis heads over to see Arnie, but notices that his friend has changed. Arnie has taken off his glasses and seems much more confident. Arnie refuses to talk to Dennis and heads to the garage to be with Christine, ignoring his mother's protests. Arnie's mother grows concerned for her son, as the car's previous owner died in it. Upon hearing this, Dennis visits George, who reveals that his brother was also obsessed with Christine, even after his wife and daughter died in the car. Worse still, after his brother's death, the car mysteriously returned to George's house. Worried about his friend, Dennis decides to check Christine himself. Sneaking into the garage, he notices the car's radio suddenly turning on, which spooks him into running away. The next morning, during a football game, Dennis sees a red Plymouth Fury drive up to the stadium. Arnie and Lee step out of the car, kissing in front of everyone. Shocked, Dennis loses focus and is hit hard by an opponent, resulting in serious injuries, a broken leg and a damaged neck. A few days later, Arnie visits Dennis in the hospital. Dennis is surprised that Arnie managed to restore Christine so quickly. Arnie admits he worked hard on it and even forced his parents to register the car in his name by threatening to drop out of school. Dennis notices that his friend has changed and become much angrier. That evening, Arnie and Lee are kissing in the car again, but she suddenly steps outside. She's upset that Arnie pays more attention to Christine than to her. Arnie dismisses this as ridiculous and urges Lee to come back, as it's raining outside. He stays outside himself to fix the broken windshield wipers. Lee decides to have a snack inside the car, but the radio suddenly turns on and the dashboard lights up brightly. She begins choking on her food, and Arnie can't get inside. The doors are locked. Luckily, a passerby manages to open the door and save Lee. Lee is furious, convinced that Christine tried to kill her out of jealousy. Arnie brushes this off as nonsense and suggests discussing it the next day. He returns to Christine, which won't start. Arnie starts talking to the car, promising not to blame her for what happened. Only then does the car start, and Arnie drives her back to the garage before heading home. A few hours later, Buddy and his friends break into the garage. Armed with sledgehammers, they smash the car. One of them slashes the seats with a knife and destroys the radio. The next day, Arnie and Lee make up and go to the garage together to retrieve Arnie's wallet from Christine's interior. When they see the destroyed car, Arie is speechless. Lee tries to console him, but he loses his temper and forces her to leave. At dinner, Arie tells his parents what happened. They try to comfort him and promise to buy him a new car. This only angers him further, as he blames them for not letting him keep Christine in the garage at home. His father demands that Arie apologize to his mother, but Arie lashes out at him instead. Arie returns to the garage, determined to fully restore Christine. However, the car inexplicably begins repairing itself, much to Arnie's amazement. That night, Moochie, one of Buddy's friends, heads home when Christine suddenly appears in front of him. Convinced that Arie is driving the car, Moochie feels threatened and tries to apologize. Christine's headlights turn on, and she begins chasing him. Moochie runs down dark streets, but Christine relentlessly pursues him until he ends up in a dead-end alley. He pulls out a knife and yells threats, but Christine doesn't stop. She somehow squeezes into the narrow alley and crushes Moochie to death. The next morning, Arie tells Dennis about what happened to Moochie. Dennis finds it very suspicious and even stranger that Christine is fully restored after the attack by Buddy's gang. Arie just shrugs and walks away. Near the garage, Detective Jenkins approaches Arie to investigate Moochie's murder. Arie claims he knows nothing, but the detective doesn't believe him, as Lee has mentioned that the car mysteriously repaired itself. This angers Arie, and he ends the conversation. Later, Arie calls Lee and asks her to meet up. She refuses, which irritates him even more. Meanwhile, Buddy and his friend Don buy some liquor at a store and drive off. Soon they notice that they're being followed by a car. Due to the bright headlights, Buddy doesn't initially realize it's Christine. Annoyed, he tries to escape by speeding up and eventually arrives at a gas station where his friend Richie works. Buddy grabs a metal pipe, ready for a fight, but suddenly Christine speeds up and crashes into Buddy's car. Buddy assumes Arie is driving and prepares to beat him up. Meanwhile, Christine accelerates again and slams into the car, pinning Don against the wall and crushing him. The crash causes a fire at the gas station, leading to a massive explosion that kills Richie. A terrified Buddy tries to run, but Christine quickly catches up to him, leaving only his body on the road. Sometime later, Will sees Christine drive back into the garage, covered in smoke. Knowing Arie shouldn't be driving at this time, the old man grabs a shotgun and tries to open the car door, which is still scorching hot. Instead of answering, Christine locks the doors and kills Will by crushing him against the dashboard with the seat. The next day, Arie arrives at the garage, where he is met by Detective Jenkins and several police officers. The detective tells him that Will's body, with a shotgun in hand, was found inside Christine. Arie claims he knows nothing about it. Lee visits Dennis, convinced that Christine is somehow controlling Arie, who's behaving increasingly erratic and cruel. Dennis is skeptical of her claims, but eventually concludes that Christine must be destroyed. Dennis goes to Arie and suggests they go for a drive together, but during the ride, Arie drastically exceeds the speed limit and even takes his hands off the wheel. A frightened Dennis begs him to stop, but this only angers Arie, who declares that nothing and no one will come between him and Christine. The next day, Dennis leaves a message on Christine's hood asking Arie to meet him. When Arie doesn't show up, Dennis and Lee climb into a bulldozer and head to the garage. Their plan is to wait for Christine to appear, with Lee closing the garage doors while Dennis crushes the car. What they don't realize is that Christine has been hiding in the corner of the garage all along. Christine attacks Lee, but she manages to grab onto a hanging tire for safety. After several collisions, Arie is thrown through the windshield, suffering fatal injuries. He dies trying to touch Christine one last time. Dennis and Lee succeed in destroying Christine using the bulldozer. The next day they, along with Detective Jenkins, watch as Christine's crushed remains are taken to a junkyard. Just when it seems like it's all over, they hear the music that played before each murder. Thankfully, it's only a worker's radio. But as soon as they leave, the compacted remains of Christine begin to straighten out, revealing that she's still alive.